As the sun begins to set and the trees huddle together in small dark groups as if shielding themselves against the coming of night, you step quietly and quickly through the carpet of fallen leaves and stray twigs, recognizing and noting as you do every rustle, every snap of a branch created by your own footfalls. You note them so that you can distinguish them from the other sounds, the soft rustlings of leaves, the crack of bracken somewhere behind you. You increase your speed knowing that night is not the only thing drawing closer. The sound increases as your pace and heartbeats quicken. You turn and in the fading light catch a single glimpse of the hunched, crawling thing that is pursuing you. Creeping forward like an animal and yet looking so horribly human, you only caught a single glimpse, but then you start to run. One glimpse is enough. Hello guys, here. We're on our countdown to Halloween with one more video to go. So in the second to last October video, we're going to go over the Rake. The Rake is sort of in a weird in-between creepypasta, cryptid, and urban legend. In following my most recent videos, it felt right to dedicate an entire video to this entity. The Rake has left a strong impression on many through the years, and especially on me growing up. Terrifying yet oddly intriguing and with lots of stories based on it. I'm only going to be able to scratch the surface, and I implore you to explore and look into the Rake even more on your own. And before I get started with the video, I would like to say that if you enjoy the content you see today, I upload frequently and you can check out my other videos to see more videos like this one. Now on to the video. The Rake is an entity with mysterious origin whose appearance is as grotesque as it is terrifying, with the most common depiction of it being humanoid in form. Naked, pale, almost starved, hairless on all fours, with beady white eyes. It is often described as carnivorous and vicious in nature, yet somehow seeming so frail. With terrifying speed, not many who see the Rake live to tell the tale. Three years ago, I had just returned from a trip from Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m. I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used a moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he got out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the end of the bed so quickly his knee almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a half a second, I was able to see what caused the strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man or a large hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5, it just seemed like a while. Just looking at my husband, the creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway, leading to the kids' room. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over, about 20 feet away. He turned around and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter Clara. The creature ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the Rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. He did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York who had seen the creature, and we now referred to as the Rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believed to be the accounts of the Rake. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only that they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in my bed each day when I woke up. By the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I've heard it before, and now I believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head make me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know in fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me. Tracking down the origins of the Rake brings us to 4chan's B-Board, where it began as a collaborative project to collectively brainstorm ideas for a new terrifying creature. And honestly, the original idea for the Rake was quite different to how we know him then. Humanoid, about 6 feet tall when standing, but usually crouches and walks on all 4s. It has very pale skin. The face is blank, as in no nose, no mouth. However, it has 3 solid green eyes, one in the middle of its forehead, and the other 2 on either side of its head, towards the back. Usually seen in front yards in suburban areas, usually just watches the observer, but will stand up and attack if approached. When it attacks, a mouth opens up as if a hinged skull that opens at the chin, reveals many tiny, but dull teeth. Eventually, the image we now associate with the Rake was created via Photoshop and spread around like wildfire, becoming the new canon for the Rake, and the story just spread from there, with people adding onto the story as eyewitnesses, claiming to have seen or been stalked by the creature. And not soon after it landed its way onto the iconic creepypasta/urban legend story we know it as today. As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him, for once I awoke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice, and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever awake. Goodbye. This was found in the same wooden box where 2 empty envelopes were addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope. He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed, I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the Rake. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow. Black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand. I will not sleep. His voice. The rake is known to taunt and terrify his victims, messing with them psychologically within their own bedrooms or homes, either leading them to hurt themselves or to weaken them so it can hunt. The rake truly is a terrifying and iconic entity spawning from the internet, and I hope this video helps you better understand the story of the rake, as well as the origins. I found it super interesting to take a deep dive, and a massive credit goes to Brian Somerville for crafting the original story on creepypasta.com. I highly recommend you check it out and read it for yourself. The takeaway I would like to instill with this video is the importance of these internet stories and urban legends. Not only can they scare, but they can bring communities together. The story of the rake was not one crafted by just one man, but was rather a collaborative effort from a group of people. These stories connect us and bring us closer to those with similar interests, and in turn makes us all feel a little less divided, which I feel like in this digital age is super important. It's so easy to get disconnected from personal connections when your world can be surrounded by apps and screens. Hell, it's something I've only just recently come to realize and made an effort to correct. Rant aside, I hope you all enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Did the story scare you, or want me to do any other stories? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked the video, it would be awesome if you could leave a like, and hey, maybe even subscribe. If you want to watch more, this is probably a good place to start. Halloween is coming up in just over a week, and the next video will come out on Halloween Day, with maybe one random, one in between. But that one's going to be a big one, and I'd hope that you all could watch it. Have a wonderful day.